acting, you often have to play characters who are older or younger than you. Now, maybe you get cast in a show and you're playing somebody's mother and they're the same age as you. Or maybe you have to play a kid, like in a show like Spelling Bee. Or perhaps you're in a movie where a person has to play a character over the span of 20 or 30 years, like Benjamin Button. But a lot of actors kind of get that wrong. They end up playing style instead of substance. In this video, we're going to talk about how to play older and how to play younger effectively. So what do I mean by playing style? Our voice is lower and our posture is bent and we're moving slow and we have no reason for acting that way. It's a caricature. It's playing style. There is an acting coach and actor, Uta Hagen, that taught this premise of playing style, and she applied it to clothing. So back in the olden days when you wore fancy clothes and stuff like that, you're playing a character, say, importance of being earnest or something like that, and you're holding your teacup and your pinkies up and you're playing style, right? You think that that's how people acted back then. Well, really, a lot of that was informed by the clothing. If you couldn't dip your cuff of your dress and you didn't want to get that dirty, that's why you would hold the teacup like this. Or if you were prim and proper and upright, it's because you're wearing a corset and that you can't bend, you know. So the costume dictates the reason why people act in that stylish way. Well, the same thing can be applied to age acting. Let's talk a little bit about playing older. So you're younger and you need to play an older character. When you're young, you don't have any first-hand experience of what it's like to be older. You can only observe other people, your parents, your grandparents. One thing that young people tend to do is they tend to overestimate how old somebody is. So for instance, you're playing somebody in their 50s. Well, 50s to a 20-year-old is ancient. You're usually probably playing something about 10 or 20 years older than they actually are. I'm in my 50s. I still have a lot of vitality and energy. So what you want to do is kind of use your parents as a gauge, because they would be about 20 years older than you, 20 to 30 years older than you. So how do you avoid playing style? You give yourself specific reasons. So you're a young person, you're playing an old person, and they're moving slowly. Why do they move slowly? You might not ever ask yourself that as an actor. You just think all old people move slow. Well, they don't. Some people move slow because they have had an injury. It's usually related to pain of some sort. They have a chronic injury or a chronic pain that makes them have to move slow. Maybe every time they stand up, they tend to get lightheaded and pass out. So they have learned over time and a few bumps and bruises to stand up very slowly, even though they might not have to do that every single time. If you have a bad back or a bad knee, or your neck is sore or your shoulder's sore, you're gonna be cautious and protective of that. And so you want to play the pain, not the slowness. Often when we're old, we play with a gruff voice. Okay, well, that's a characterization of oldness, and it's not what everybody experiences. In fact, after puberty, your voice pretty much stays the same. You may find yourself using the lower register a lot because it's easier. Same thing can be said of an older person playing young, using your higher register, but kids don't speak like this all the time. They just have more energy. They use more of the range of their voice and they don't stay up in that higher register. We keep our same voice pretty much our whole life. Now, if the voice is gruff and you want to make that choice, why is it gruff? Did the person smoke and drink their whole life? Did they yell a lot at sporting games and blow their voice out? Have they had some sort of surgery on their throat? There are reasons why voice would be lowered. Older people tend to speak slower, not because there's any physical limitation. It's because they have learned over time to think before they speak. They have learned over time how people are going to respond, to keep their thoughts to themselves. They've gone through the social ups and downs that speaking out of turn have caused, and so they are much more deliberate about how they speak. Their breath control may be another issue. They aren't breathing as they used to, so maybe they speak a little slower because they have to catch their breath. Also, eyesight. As you're getting older, around your 40s and 50s, pretty much everybody in the world will start to lose their nearsightedness. They will need to wear readers. If you're playing a character that needs to look at something up close, almost always put put on readers. And likewise, if the character doesn't have any glasses on, they are probably not going to see things clearly. They're going to have to hold anything they read back further. They're going to maybe study something a little bit longer because they're focusing on it. Same thing with hearing. Your hearing starts to go, not with everybody, but you need things repeated. You need people to talk to you a little bit louder, and therefore you might talk a little bit louder as well. And the same thing with posture. Osteoporosis and bone density, all those things start to shrink somebody. Your skin starts to sag as you get older. Your wrinkles are forming. Everything's kind of just melting off of you bit by bit. And it's a gradual thing over time. These little things happen to your body that you can't explain, and they just stick around, and it just gets worse and worse and worse until you're just a sludge pile on the floor. It's not something that happens to everyone and all at once. So you have to find the reasons why you're playing those things. Many people in their 60s and 70s are still very vital, still have great posture, still have an even tone in their voice, and still have energy. So in a nutshell, don't play age, play a physical condition, play a limitation, an injury, play with exhaustion versus energy, wellness versus illness, play with pain. All right, let's talk about being older, an older person, say you're in their 50s or 60s, and you need to play somebody younger. One of the big mistakes here is we play this high-pitched voice and this youthful energy and stuff like that. Well, yes, we play energy, but you need to be able to muster that energy within your old body and remember how you used to be. Remember that you used to speak your mind and say things to be funny or humorous, and you maybe didn't care so much about somebody's feelings or emotions. You put your foot in your mouth, and you had to learn those lessons along the way. Well, the younger person hasn't learned those lessons yet, and they're still exploring the world, and they're still trying things out and testing the waters. There's an optimism, perhaps, or a pessimism. A lot of people are pessimistic when they're young too. It depends on the circumstances of your character. Don't play high-pitched voice because that's insincere. Play energy, enthusiasm, exploration, wonder and amazement at something new that you haven't experienced before. Befuddlement at an argument that comes up because you don't know the way people operate yet. Never play your voice higher than it is unless you're playing somebody who's maybe unless you're playing a preteen or a toddler, or like your good man Charlie Brown. But even then, you don't need to do it. We understand that you're kids. We take that conceit. I see so many people playing young people like this, and they talk like a high voice and stuff like that. It's not about the high voice. Your voice is the same your whole life. It's about the energy level. It's about the enthusiasm. It's about being able to move and do things. And it's hard for people who have a broken hip and a bad back to do that kind of youthful energy, but that's what you need to play in order to portray a youthful person. And also, when you're playing to kids, you're doing children's theater or something like that, you're playing young, don't pander to kids. You have actually had the experience of being a teenager or a child before in your life, right? You have to dig back and really experience that again. And if you can't, then go hang around children. If you're a parent, you probably already kind of know what kids act like, and you can just imitate your teen or your child. But if you're not around children, go be around some children in a nice, safe, responsible way. Go watch children at a playground, not in a creepy, you know what I'm saying. Just observe children, and you'll see how they are exploratory, how they're just bold and brave, and they are yelling and screaming and crying and laughing, but it's not in this fake way, and kids can see right through that. So if you're doing children's theater, do your stuff as an adult, okay? And just have that energy and youthfulness, but don't play style. Don't play young, dumb kid, because kids are not dumb. Don't ever play a child or a teenager or a 20-something as ignorant or innocent or naive. Adults and older people have life experience, of course. They've lived, they know about human relationships. They know about the cycles of life. They know how things are likely to turn out. They have history on their side. Younger people are in school, they are learning things, they're much more book smart, they're usually much more street smart, they're tech smart, and they know the lingo of the day, and they are out there, they are politically involved, and you should never play a young person as being ignorant or stupid, unless that's written into the character, The youth will not buy it if you act them that way. Do you understand what I'm saying? All right, cool. And then finally, let the script at hand dictate how you portray a character, whether it's older or younger, because there are exceptions to everything that I'm saying, and certainly in improv comedy and whatnot, it's fine to play a character or play style. But in general, if you want to be a sincere and believable player of different ages, these are the tips that you should follow. Shout out to my Patreon sponsors. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm glad to see you here. Hope to see you again soon. Talk to you later. Bye.